Welcome, future masters, to Black Knight Chess. Look at the size of this monster. This is the biggest knight I've ever seen. Well, in person anyway. Well, let's go on with it. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at problems of what I call unstoppable checkmate, where one side, black or white, is going to set up an unstoppable checkmate threat that, if allowed to be executed, ends in checkmate. So, what you have to do is consider, can this guy harass my king? Can he intercept or interfere with my pieces? Or create some other kind of inconvenience that disrupts this checkmate? Some cases, the threat of checkmate can only be stopped by hideous loss of material, which is in itself a win. So sometimes it will end in checkmate, sometimes it will end in winning of a piece or a combination that clarifies the board, removes threats by the opponent, and usually will end with a material advantage for us because we're what matters. So hopefully you enjoy these problems. Very instructive. I'll help you out a lot. See you guys later. Welcome, future masters. Make sure you hit the like button. It'll help a lot. So my opponent played rook to g1 to counter what I'm doing on the g file. Me, as you can see, this bar over here is very bad for white, even as where the arrowhead is. I played g4 because come get some. So he's got problems. He misses what's happening here and plays rook e to f1. Now, your challenge is to figure out what would you play here as black. So I would say take about 5 minutes. Pause the video, and we'll be back in 3, 2, 1. Oh boy, are we back. So, did you see g3? g3 for black, how would white respond? I hope you would say h3, because that would be correct, because g3 is a bad move. But it looks like the natural move. You could play g takes f3. If you'll notice, you only have queen and pawn attacking f3. He's got pawn, rook, and queen. So he's going to hold this. Pawn takes, rook takes, rook takes. And you're still not winning that. However, I uncorked this move. I'm channeling my inner Bobby Fischer. This, as you can see, the computer shows you here that there's no bar. Black has a forced checkmate. Now, in the game, I don't know this. I have to rely upon my study and all the problems that I do, and my spidey senses were telling me, dude, I think I've got a side rank checkmate. So the locker move now, g3 is crushing. There's nothing he could do. This is the thing that I was going to mention in another video, and we're going to get to this later. But the whole point of this sequence is this is the tactic of unstoppable checkmate. So let's finish this off. So g3 is nothing you can do. King h1, king h3 is all the same. Rook to g6. Notice he's got absolutely no break of my attack. There's nothing he could do. He cannot take on g3. He cannot interpose along the h file. He's completely dust. He plays a move because whatever. And that's a checkmate. So this is terrific. I have another one for you that's also awesome. So we're finished with this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Here is another one where he played this move. Now the obvious reply, take the rook, because it was a check. But in this position here, what
drew my attention was the threat of an unstoppable checkmate. So what we're going to do is play rook to g2, threatening an unstoppable mate on h2. And when we say unstoppable, we mean unstoppable maintaining equality or to advantage. He's going to have to give up material to stop the checkmate. So that's part of unstoppable checkmate. Also means literally a checkmate that cannot be stopped once the checks by the opponent have been removed. So we threaten unstoppable checkmate, and the obvious sequence is queen f8 check, king c7, bishop checks, b6, and he's got a problem because queen f7, you just go king b8, and another check on f8 goes king to b7, and we'll go king to a6. So here he's able to wrangle a stoppage of the checkmate. So you look at this and it's like, wow, that's rook's guarded. Queen takes queen, pawn takes free bishop. That's what my father would say. And this endgame is just crushing for white. This is just a crushing endgame for white. The rook can go here to threaten. I mean, you can do whatever. His rook is paralyzed by the threat of a back rank checkmate. This king walks this place with unstoppable freedom. So this one is an endgame that's reached, that's absolutely winning for black because of the threat of unstoppable mate. So white has no way out of this. Rook to g1, rook takes free pawn. He can check you once, and then you get out. Once you get out of checks, the rook has to go right back to the back rank. And it's just a matter of time before you clean the clock of every pawn that he has. Actually, you would check. You would just go forward. If you kill this f pawn with the king, it's goodbye Charlie. So that's another one. Here we see another threatened unstoppable checkmate. Rook takes f7. He cannot sit idly by. After rook takes f7, white is threatening queen g7 mate. So he just can't sit there and let you do it. So rook takes, and now the killer pawn check, because the queen's command of this long diagonal forces another checkmate. So not exactly the same as the unstoppable checkmate, but it's very close. So that's why I included it. Here we have another example. After the knight takes the piece, the thing that stands out to me is my father would call this bishop the cobra on the long diagonal. So you see this guy, the thing that's kind of hidden here is the fact that this, by moving e6, we're threatening this checkmate on g7. The king cannot go to f7. It's just a killer move. Jumped out at me quickly, and then this is the classic example of the unstoppable checkmate threat. Is that he can check us, knight g3 check, followed by rook to d1 check. How you respond to this is the key. Because when you make the unstoppable checkmate threat, if you can stop him from checking you, you win because you're going to deliver the nasty checkmate. So he checks me. And I see that taking this knight with the F pawn allows rook check, rook takes, queen check, king to here, g2, and then queen e2 check. You cannot allow subsequent checks. So we're going to take this with the h pawn. If he wants to play queen to h3 check, we're like fine with that. King to g1. As soon as he stops the checking, queen g7 is mate. The pawn, I dare you to check me on h3. Well, it's terrible, so he doesn't do it. Just assume that your opponent is a smart player, that he's not going to play the stupid moves. And if he surprises you and plays the stupid moves, you win easily. So here at this check was a crossroads, just like the knight check. How you take the knight is important. Well, what you do about this rook is important. You can choose not to capture the rook or capture the rook. The thing that I noticed is that the easiest way to look at this is capture the rook first. Analyze, if you're going to go, I'm going to analyze taking or not taking. Let's analyze taking first. Usually that's a lot simpler because you're removing pieces from the board. So rook takes rook, queen takes rook, check. And now his only real threat that he has is maybe a white light square diagonal check. King h2, and what do? Or, what does he do? Your queen guards h1. So we take, he checks the, king to here allows f3 check. We got a checkmate going, so it doesn't really matter. He runs out of checks. Queen takes check, king h2, pawn takes check, king h3. He can't check us on h1 or queen guards it. And eventually king just marches away. It doesn't matter. So this is the classic. We set up the unstoppable checkmate. Queen takes pawn, loses to checkmate. He doesn't have anything to stop this. Rook to d4, queen f7 check, super nasty, followed by e7. The checkmate is just nasty one way or another. That's why it's included. 2750. A great problem.